On this day, we mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day, commemorating the 77th anniversary of the end of the Holocaust. We pay tribute to the victims and all those who have suffered untold tragedy during the Holocaust. Their anguish and loss will never be forgotten. We also honour the survivors. May their stories of courage, strength and hope continue to inspire future generations and bring wisdom to ensure that this atrocity and devastation may never be repeated. Australia is a proud member of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. We are determined that anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, and indeed xenophobia and hate have no place in Australian society. In that regard, we also pledge to call out anti-Semitism online, facilitate public reporting to online service providers, and encourage public engagement in this process. Indeed, as our last living connections to that time start to fade, we need to renew our commitment to education and research so that apathy and ignorance does not become the bedrock of hatred. Today, as Australia joins communities and nations around the world in commemorating one of the darkest periods in human history, we also take the opportunity to remember. We must all continue to shine a light into that darkness and collectively ensure that the tragedy of the Holocaust is never forgotten or repeated.
Shalom. On the 27th of January, we mark the 77th anniversary of the end of the Holocaust. During the course of World War II, Hitler's attempts to exterminate the Jewish race led to the death of approximately 6 million Jews. To put that in context, in 1945, the entire Australian population was around 7.5 million people. When I was at school in Year 12, in the study of English, we were required to read Schindler's Ark, which was a story of a man called Oskar Schindler, who was a German industrialist who, under the very noses of the Nazis, saved thousands of Jews from Hitler's extermination camps. That book and the resultant movie starring Liam Neeson had a very profound impact upon me as a young man. When I was at the Holocaust Museum Yad Vashem in Jerusalem a few years ago, I was pleased to see Schindler recognised with a tree planted in his honour in the Avenue of the Righteous. As Australians, we recognise the Holocaust for what it was. We don't seek to diminish its significance or understate its impact on the Jewish community, both here and right throughout the world. The very basis for the Holocaust arose through anti-Semitism. As we know, Australia has embraced the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism, which refers to a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as a hatred of Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. With the passing of each year, there are fewer of the Holocaust survivors to remind us of the horrors that befell the Jews in Europe. Survivors like our very own Eddie Jacku, who wrote the wonderful autobiography, The Happiest Man Alive. Sadly, last year we lost Eddie, and as the numbers of the Holocaust survivors dwindle even further, it's up to us that remain to keep the memories of the Holocaust alive so that it may never happen again. That is how we best remember its victims. Sadly, we have seen in recent times an increase in those who would argue that the Holocaust never happened. Once again, this denial of the Holocaust and its global impacts is born of ignorance, intolerance, and anti-Semitism, for which we as Australians must speak out against. We must speak out against those untruths. It's now more important than ever that we remind the world that the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust can never be allowed to happen again to anyone, anywhere, of any race around the world.
היום, ביום הזיכרון הבינלאומי לשואה אנחנו זוכרים את 6 מיליון היהודים שנרצחו על ידי הנאצים רק בגלל שהיו יהודים. השואה הייתה פשע בלתי ניתן לתיאור וצלקת בלתי ניתנת להסרה בהיסטוריה האנושית. פשע שממנו אנחנו חייבים ללמוד עד כמה שברירי אורח החיים הדמוקרטי שלנו, שעשוי להתפורר אם ניקח אותו כמובן מאליו ולא נלחם על הדמוקרטיה. פשע ממנו אנחנו חייבים ללמוד כיצד כוחות אפלים יכולים לנצל מערכות דמוקרטיות כדי להרוס את שלטון החוק ולהפוך אותו לעריצות גזענית ורצחנית. בשמי ובשם הכנסת ובשם מדינת ישראל אני מודה לכם על ציון היום החשוב הזה.